Think of better rumors, but not that one.
All right, our Econ Recon brings together a blowout panel today, lots of polar opposite views. Peter Schiff, president of Euro Capital, author of Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, is on, and Brian Westbury, First Trust Advisors, chief economist and CNBC contributor. Our guest host, Andrew Ross Sorkin of the New York Times. Peter, I want to focus on the Barron's piece, and specifically on some stuff towards the end of the interview. You named your company Euro Pacific. Obviously, you think the U.S. is in decline. The place for growth is in Europe and the Pacific. But you don't blame capitalism for the decline in the U.S., and you really don't blame the consumers. You hang all the blame on government and on regulation, and I thought that was interesting. What are you talking about?
Well, first of all, it's the government. When I say the government, I also mean the Federal Reserve that has artificially kept interest rates much too low in this country, and in so doing, they've encouraged a culture of consumption, of borrowing to buy things. And in America, we borrow to buy houses, to buy cars, to send our kids to school, to remodel our houses, to take vacations. And what we're seeing right now is the fact that we can't pay any of this money back, and the lenders are cutting us off, and this whole bubble economy that we have is now deflating. But it never would have existed if we had honest money. If we were on a gold standard and we had higher interest rates, we would have been saving and we would have been producing, and we wouldn't be in this mess.
All right, so it's the Federal Reserve and the government's fault, but we've been willing, consumers and just the average American has been a willing participant, no savings, borrowing to finance, living beyond our means with the rest of the world funding our extravagance.
Exactly.
How do we get out of it? You said that it's not the end of the world. That even, the World War, the Axis came back after World War II. I mean, countries can come back. What do we need to do?
It's going to be tough. You know, you guys gave me the nickname Dr. Doom, because I predicted all this stuff.
Who's you guys? Was it Carl or Becky?
Well, no,
or me,
it was on Squawk Box. Maybe it was Mark Haynes. I don't know, but that's where it started. Mark Haynes. But you started calling me Dr. Doom. But look, it's not going to be easy. We need to raise interest rates dramatically. What's that going to do? It's probably going to bankrupt most of the financials. It's going to bankrupt a lot of companies. We're going to have to go through a big retrenchment because we basically spent ourselves into bankruptcy. But we can't keep trying to reflate the bubble. That's what the Fed is doing. That's what the stimulus is trying to do. They're trying to get us to spend more money. That's the problem. We spent too much. So we're going to have to live through a severe recession. If we keep fighting it, all we're going to have is higher inflation, higher oil prices, higher commodity prices, and eventually we're going to get something far worse than just a severe recession. We could have hyperinflation and the complete destruction of our currency.
Peter, I think we brought Brian Westbury on to disagree with you, and I can't imagine that anything you just said that he's going to disagree with. Brian?
Well, yeah, I do. I think
not
some
much
of that.
So. I mean, you wish the Fed hadn't cut too, right?
I think some of that rhetoric is way over the top. People can't pay any of their loans back. We're going to bankrupt all of the financials. I don't buy that. Well, and I think it's very clear that in the last 6 years, the Fed has been too easy. But for the previous 20 years, the Fed did good. They brought inflation down from, they brought inflation down from 12% down to about 1%. In fact, we were worried about deflation at the turn of the century.
I wasn't.
And since 2001, when the Federal Reserve, and then since 2001 when the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to 1%, that's when the inflationary problem started. So this is not some long credit expansion bubble that's about to go burst and take the economy down. This is about the last 5 or 6 years that's been a mistake in monetary policy. We're paying the price for it now. They are going to have to lift interest rates. I do agree with Peter about that. But the guarantee of some massive recession when they do is just not there.
Well,
if they lift
there's got to be
5 or 6%.
There's got to be some payback, though. Then, right?
Brian,
what's the payback?
Look, we're going to have the payback.
What do you mean? We're in the payback right now. Subprime loans are blowing up. The housing market has problems. Bear Stearns went out. Financial sector is in tatters in terms of its earnings. That's the payback.
Look,
we're in the midst of it. Just like back in the 80s when we lost Penn Square Bank, Continental Bank.
Brian,
first of all, Peter wants to answer. Go ahead.
First of all, we've had this bad monetary policy for a long time. When oil was under $20 a barrel and gold was under $300, when I was saying gold's going to 1,000, oil's going going over 100 because I understood that bad monetary policy back then. But when you're talking about low inflation, you're looking at these government numbers. We've already got inflation over 10%. We're in a recession right now.
We're going to have Peter on. A lot of things have come true, Peter, and we'll give you that. One thing I want you to just tell me. I think by now you got to admit you would have thought that bonds and long bond yields that foreigners would not be funding our funding, and that bonds would be 10% by now. That hasn't happened. Has that been something that puzzles you, or can you make? Well, how do you logically explain that given your scenario?
Well, that's the last remaining bubble. You know, the bond bubble is going to burst. But if you look at what's happening to interest rates in general, the cost to individuals and corporations to borrow money, that's going up. It's very difficult now to finance student loans or to finance a lot of things, but the government is still able to borrow money, I think, thanks in large part to foreign central banks, to speculators and hedge funds. But this is a giant bubble. It is going to burst.
So they're going to get tired. Foreign central banks are going to eventually stop doing this. You're sure of that?
That's the question. And then what? What's the catalyst that brings it back? Peter, you've been right so far, but flip it around. At some point in life, you got to get bullish again.
Well, yeah, at some point I probably will, but by the time U.S. stocks are going to be very cheap by the time I do, and this economy is going to be in much worse shape. But I hopefully will see the light at the end of the tunnel. But we're going to have to.
Unfortunately, we got to go. We need more time for that. Brian, do you have a last word? Sorry, Peter, we'll have you back. But last word, Brian?
Stocks already are cheap. And by the way, 6 years ago, I was saying inflation's coming back.
All right.
And this whole idea that we're about to blow up because this has been going on for 20 years. Is I don't believe that, and the final thing final thing is, Peter, you can't just throw out the numbers. Oh, you don't believe GDP, you don't believe inflation.
I don't believe the government.
If you write your own book, you can believe it. That's great.
No, I don't believe the government. They've got an agenda. They've got a vested interest. They're not telling the truth.
So do
and
you.
The facts bear it out. No, I don't. I'm just trying to make money for my clients. I'm trying to tell people like it is.
Peter, you haven't been on real TV in a long time. It's great to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me. Let's make it a habit again.
We are going to make it a habit again. And Brian, both of you guys are over the top in certain areas, but both of you
agree. It's a weird overlap,
and they've been right about. So even though they're so diametrically opposed, they've both been right.
We got to get you guys both at the table.
Yeah, can you come into the studio? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
sure.
You can come to New Jersey.
And we'll bring Ars back too, Andrew Russ. Thanks, guys.
Steve Leisman, too.
All right, we'll bring him in here. We even bring that. Who was that other guy you said?
Mark Haynes.
Yeah. Okay,
so
maybe
now
not.
You remember.
Yeah, no, all right. Stocks that are, thanks, guys. Stocks that are moving this